Thank you, everyone. Sorry.
All right, just so everyone knows, you are live on Facebook and we're recording, so you're good to go.
Perfect. Oh, and I have to just get this out 1 second. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so everyone can see my screen, I'm assuming. Okay. Can everyone see this slideshow for human anatomy and organs?
Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So, hello everyone. I'm Parisa Asher, and I'll be talking about our human body and the various organs that function together in order to help us survive. So, I like to kind of consider the human body as the best machinery in the world, because if you think about it, there's not really a certain machine anyone can build that can replicate all the different functions that the human body carries out. It has a multitude of organs that characterize various functions. And today we'll be focusing on anatomy, which is a name of science dedicated to studying the human body and how it works. And we'll also be looking at the culmination of these functions, which help us survive and carry out our everyday activities. So our first organ we're going to be looking at is our eyes. Oh, and I also recommend everyone to take notes for this session, because it's going to be somewhat of a lot of material which you will need later on, so just a heads up. So we have 3 layers in our eyes, an outer, middle, and inner layer. Our outer layer is very tough. It's also known as the white eye, the white part in everyone's eye, and it's known as the sclera. I can't pronounce that right. So basically, it's the white part of the eye with the cornea, which is the transparent layer forming the front of our eye at the very front. If you look at the diagram on the left, the cornea is this kind of plastic shield looking thing in terms of the being in the front of our eye. So that's the outer layer. The middle layer is our choroid, which contains the lens and helps, which contains the lens and helps create clear images of any objects, and it also contains tiny blood vessels as well. 1 second, actually, I'm having audio problems, so let me just fix something really quickly. Oh, okay.
Marissa, your slideshow went back. If you want to hit slideshow from current slide. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. There was a few problems. Okay, so can everyone see my slideshow right now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So I'll just start off where I stopped. The middle layer is known as the choroid. So the choroid contains the lens, which, if you guys know, lens helps create clear images of objects, and it contains tiny blood vessels. And finally, the inner layer of the eye is called the retina, which is the light-sensitive part of the eye. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of surgeries involving the retina and how damage to it can result in blindness, which I'll go later on. So in terms of the lens, it's a transparent disc that focuses light onto the retina. In fact, it has to focus it at such an angle in order for us to see a clear image of a certain object. People who are very nearsighted, right? They can't see objects that are far away from them because it extends past the retina. Meanwhile, people that are farsighted, their angle is coming before the retina, or the angle of light, so it's not exactly hitting the retina when it needs to. So that's why people don't see clear images of objects. So after that, we have the iris, which is the colored part of Oh, sorry, I unmuted.
You are muted.
Yeah, so the next part is the iris, which is the colored part of the eye. So basically when you hear people saying they have blue, brown eyes, they're referring to their iris over here, which is the blue thing you see in the diagram to the left. And then after that, we have the pupil, which is an opening in the iris that lets light into the eye. So a lot of you guys have heard of the pupil. It's like the tiny black dot that everyone has. It's a hole, in essence, that allows light to come into the eye and, in essence, hit the retina. And then finally, we also have the cornea, which is a transparent dome that refracts or bends incoming light. And then one thing I would like to say about the retina is that it's packed with light-sensitive cells called rods and cones. So rods are very abundant. They're important for seeing in dim light or like darkness. And cones, they function best in bright light, like during the daytime. And yes, rods are more abundant than cones. So I'll be talking more about sight and how images are relayed to us and in a way transformed in our brain as to how we see images. So we receive information from light rays. So rays are either absorbed or reflected. When you look at an object, the light rays reflected from the object enter the eye. So let's just say I see a container that's blue. So when I'm seeing that blue container, it's the blue rays that are being reflected from the object into my eye. That's why I see the color blue. So light is refracted, like I mentioned earlier, by the cornea, which is the transparent layer forming the front of the eye, like over here, and passes through the watery aqueous humor. And that, in essence, is just a watery fluid that flows between and nourishes the lens and the cornea, right? Because if we didn't have that, our eyes would dry up. And then our pupil, which is the hole in the center of the eye, to the lens. So the iris, which I mentioned earlier, refers to the color of your eyes, controls the amount of light entering the eye. You don't want it too bright, nor you want it too dim. And then the lens focuses the light through the vitreous humor onto the retina, forming an image in reverse and upside down. So if you look at the image to the left over here, it is right side up, or we perceive it as right side up. But the way the eye changes the images is that they turn it upside down. See, the candle over here is looking normal, but then when you look towards the back of the eye, the candle is upside down. So in essence, the eyes actually flip the images that we see upside down, but the brain is able to flip the image right side up again. So I just wanted to share it kind of as like an interesting fact. And then finally, light-sensitive cells in the retina, which I mentioned earlier, like cones and rods, transmit the image to the brain by electrical signals. So the next slide, oops. So the next slide is the brain. So the brain is so useful and it can be divided into various departments. So I'll first be talking about the brain stem, which is this purple thing you see in the diagram towards the bottom of the brain. It's like our life support system. We really need it. It's important for breathing, digestion. Without it, we would not live at all. Meanwhile, the cerebellum, which is the light green part you see at the bottom, like right half of the brain over here in the image, is a mini brain in charge of balance and moving around. People who have problems with the cerebellum tend to be like very dizzy or nauseous. And then another part of the brain that is important is the thalamus. So the thalamus processes information sent through the nervous system. So we can have like an ongoing of a lot of organs sending, you could say, electrical signals to the brain. But in essence, the thalamus is like a relay center. It's the one processing all the information and all the commands that the brain needs to carry out. And so it's located in the core or the center of the brain. And the hypothalamus is important in responses to cold, hunger, and pain. So another part of the brain is the cerebral hemisphere, or the cerebrum. And the outer layer of the cerebrum, well, actually, before I get into that, the cerebrum can be divided into two hemispheres, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. One interesting thing to note is that the right hemisphere of the cerebrum controls the left side of the body, but the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body. So it's, they're like doing it as a cross section. And one reason why they control the opposite side of the body is because of something known as the corpus callosum, which connects both the right and left hemispheres together, kind of like an X. So that's why it kind of makes sense when a right hemisphere carries out a certain function, it'll be controlling the left side of the body. So the cerebrum, the outer layer of the cerebrum is known as the cerebral cortex, which is the outer layer of the brain. And it's very important for complex functions like reading, writing, and speaking. So those were like the internal structures of the brain, but now I'll kind of get into more of the matter, what it's composed of, and the different lobes of the brain. So gray matter is made up of tightly packed nerve cell bodies, and that forms the outer layer of the brain. You can see, in essence, and its name is gray, so it forms the gray regions of the brain. The white matter is the tissue through which messages pass through different areas of gray matter within the central nervous system. So the white matter is white because of a fatty-like substance called myelin that surrounds nerve fibers or axons. So in essence, nerve fibers help relay electrical signals throughout the nervous system, either to the brain. They can be sensory nervous signals or motor signals. So they either help us move or they relay certain senses that we feel. So axons are like the head of the each nerve that helps relay signals from one nerve cell to another nerve cell. So in essence, the white matter of the brain is composed of these axons or nerve fibers. So the brain can be divided into various lobes. So the lobes is the frontal lobe, the lobe I'll be talking about first is the frontal lobe, which is the part of the brain that controls important like cognitive skills, meaning like emotional expression, problem solving, memory, judgment, language, and also when you grow older, like sexual behaviors as well. It is in essence the control panel of our personality and our ability to communicate, especially with others. Another lobe that is very important is the parietal lobe, which is this yellow region you see on the top half of the brain, and it processes sensory information it receives from the outside world, mainly relating to touch, taste, temperature. Think of your like 5 senses. Damage to the parietal lobe can lead to dysfunction in the senses in essence. The next lobe is the temporal lobe, which is involved with primary auditory perception, like hearing, and holds the primary auditory cortex. So the temporal lobe is like towards the bottom of the brain. And finally, the occipital lobe is the visual processing center of the mammalian brain, containing most of the anatomical region of the visual cortex. So it helps relay everything that we see. So if you, a lot of injuries, like especially like with football players, right? They injure the back of their head, and they turn out to be blind. So a lot of the people are like, wait, if the eyes are in the front of the face, how come when they're injured on the back, they turn out being blind? That's because it's damage to the occipital lobe, which is responsible for processing visual information. So if you damage it really badly, then you can in essence be blind, despite your eyes being towards the front of your face. So the heart. The next organ I'll be talking about is the heart, in which I have a model right here. The heart is located between the lungs towards the left side of the chest. It's able to pump blood via arteries throughout the body, supplying with oxygen and nutrients. So veins carry blood back to the heart. So with the two most important ones being the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. So in essence, when our heart contracts, you may hear the sound lub-dub, like let's say you feel your heart right now. It makes that beating sound, lub-dub, lub-dub. That's because the heart's contracting. And the apex, which is a blunt point of like just the bottom of the heart, pulses with every beat of the heart. One interesting fact to note is that if you want to know what the size of your heart approximately is, just hold your fist and it's about this big. It's not that big actually, considering how much it helps our body in pumping blood to the rest of our organs. And inside the heart, we have important characteristics called valves. So if you look at this model over here, I don't know if everyone's able to see the diagram to the left. We see like these white valves, like in this case, mitral valve, aortic valve. So these valves prevent blood from flowing back in the chambers of the heart when it contracts. Think of it like the blood has to go forward throughout the body. It can't go back. And so the heart is part of a system called the circulatory system, which is made up of veins, arteries that deliver and exchange important gases like carbon dioxide, which is the gas you typically breathe out, and then oxygen, which is the gas you typically need to breathe, to several of the organs in our body. I don't know, can everyone see my camera right now? Can everyone see me talking through the camera or no? Because I want to just show you.
Yes, and if you, there's like a speaker view, so if you can't see her right now, just find that speaker view and you should be able to see her.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just holding kind of the heart model over here right now. So it's just going to be important for later on when I'm kind of describing the different areas of the heart. So the heart has 4 chambers, which is the left atrium, which is the top left counterpart here, the left ventricle, which is right below the left atrium. Then on the right side, there's a right atrium over here, and then a right ventricle, which is right below the right atrium. You can see it through the diagram, and then you can also see it through my model that I'm holding right now through my camera. So I'll be talking about the different valves within these 4 chambers of the heart. So within the left atrium and the left ventricle, the valve that exists there is the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve. And remember, valves are important to help prevent blood, which is being pumped from the heart, going back up into the upper chambers. For example, the blood needs to flow from the left atrium to the left ventricle. So the mitral valve will allow the blood to flow from these 2 chambers. The next valve we'll be talking about is the aortic valve. So right after it goes to the left ventricle, the blood will flow from the left ventricle over here to this type of valve called the aortic valve, which will lead to a big artery called the aorta. And the aorta, in essence, leads to basically kind of sending this oxygenated or rich oxygen blood to the rest of the organs within our body so that they can use the oxygen in this blood to survive. So then after it goes through the aorta and eventually comes back, it goes to the right atrium, and the right atrium, it leads the right ventricle to a valve called the tricuspid valve. And then finally, the 4th valve located between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery, which leads to the lungs, is the pulmonary valve. So just talking more about the pulmonary artery, it delivers deoxygenated or blood that's not rich in oxygen to lungs in order to receive more oxygen from these lungs. As you guys are aware of, lungs produce oxygen, which we need to survive. So once it goes to the lungs to receive oxygen, it subsequently returns back to the heart through the pulmonary vein to the left atrium. So keep in mind, try to remember this as a rule. Veins are important. Veins, in essence, lead back to the heart, and arteries are vessels that lead outside of the heart. So after oxygenated blood passes through the left atrium and left ventricle, it enters through the aorta, as I mentioned earlier, and spreads oxygenated blood throughout the rest of the body through the circulatory system. So kind of mentioning the circulatory system, if you guys can see my camera right now, I don't know if you guys can see me, my camera and me holding the poster, but this is in essence a poster of the circulatory system. So over here we have a pulmonary artery. Over here, these balloons which I made are the lungs. Can everyone see like the lungs or the balloons through my camera?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, perfect. And then this whole straw that I use is in essence replicating our circulatory system within our body. So this is our heart, okay? And we need to first pretend that right now we have blood, but it's not rich in oxygen. We need to obtain this oxygen. So where do we go to get the oxygen for our blood? We go to the lungs over here. So basically, this heart, once it goes through the superior vena cava and the right atrium, and then goes to the right ventricle, keep in mind this is deoxygenated blood or blood that's not rich in oxygen. It goes from the pulmonary artery, exits the heart, and goes to these lungs and picks up oxygen. So once we pick up the oxygen, as you may have noticed, I used blue coloring for poor oxygen blood and red coloring for rich oxygenated blood. This blood now has oxygen after picking it up from the lungs. So once it has this oxygen, it enters in through the pulmonary vein. Remember, all veins lead to the heart. So once it enters the pulmonary vein, it goes to the left atrium. Then once it enters the left atrium, it goes to the mitral valve, the left ventricle, and then finally it goes out through the aortic valve through the aorta, which is a really big artery that helps kind of package this blood to the rest of the organs that are important. For example, once it exits the aorta, imagine the speed being the blood. This bead, in essence, travels down to various different arteries. So in this case, it goes to an artery to help deliver the oxygen blood to the liver, because the liver needs oxygen. Then it'll go to the intestines, kidneys, and then any additional organs below. And then once it delivers all of that blood or all of that oxygen from that blood to these different organs like the liver, intestines, and kidneys, then the blood becomes once again deoxygenated and returns back to the heart through the right atrium. So you just repeat this whole cycle of the deoxygenated blood going to the lungs to pick up oxygen, and then delivering all that oxygenated blood outside of the aorta, carrying out from the heart to the rest of the organs in our body, like the liver, intestines, and kidneys, as they need oxygen to carry out their functions. So that was just a quick poster showing you guys how the circulatory system works. It was a bit of an interactive poster that I had, so I wanted to show you. So speaking of the heart and circulatory system, now it's a good way to transition to the lungs. So lungs, in essence, think of them as these bubble-shaped chambers that are made up of the softest, pinkest flesh called alveoli. Oxygen in the air gets exchanged for carbon dioxide within the lungs. So our windpipe is, oh, Chirag and Gauri, you're raising your hand. Do you have questions?
Yeah, so I think this is really cool, but I can't really write all of it down. So would there be a way to get this PowerPoint online?
Yes, definitely. I'll also email all of you guys my PowerPoint, and then I'll have it available on our website, thesteminate.com. But I'll email everyone the PowerPoint later on. Yes, and also if you have any questions, please feel free to speak like whenever, interrupt, and I can definitely explain because it all ultimately ties in together. But don't worry, I will have a PowerPoint available if anyone needs it. So you basically want me to kind of go through the circulatory system again. I could definitely go through. In essence, what I was just trying to explain from this board, it's really simple. So basically we have a heart, right? But the heart is responsible for pumping blood to the rest of the organs in our body. Like you could think of the liver, kidneys, so they need the oxygen. But in order for them to get oxygen from the blood, the heart first needs to get that oxygen from the lungs. Because remember, the lungs help us breathe, and they're the ones which produce oxygen, which I'll kind of carry on in this slide. But if you look through my camera in this poster, in essence, the heart just gets oxygen from the lungs, and then once it gets that oxygenated rich blood, it can then carry it out, and in essence, through the aorta, which is just an artery, leading through different organs like the liver, intestines, and kidneys, so that these different organs can then receive oxygen to carry out their functions. So in essence, if you notice, I use like a blue straw and a red straw over here. The red straw just means that the blood is oxygenated or rich with oxygen. If you notice, once these blood cells go to the organs like intestines and liver, they become blue because these organs have already obtained the oxygen from the blood, and the blood's now deoxygenated. So in essence, this low oxygen blood will go back to the heart, which will then go back to the lungs to get more oxygen, and then will go back to the rest of the organs to deliver more oxygen. So it's like a cycle repeating again and again. So sorry if I kind of went a little bit too quickly, but that's in essence the circulatory system. And so because of that, I'll be going now more in depth with the lungs and how, in essence, we need them for getting oxygen within our blood. So oxygen in the air gets exchanged for carbon dioxide within our lungs. Our windpipe divides many times inside us, making millions of small tubes that spread out to all the lungs alveoli, which is the flesh within the lungs. So capillaries, or in essence, certain, you could say like capillaries or type of veins or arteries, carry blood throughout the alveoli or the lungs, which pick up oxygen ready to transport to nearby cells. Think of capillaries as like streets. We need to go on this set path to pick up something from our destination, in this case being the lungs. So the blood is traveling to this path called the capillaries. And once it's traveling to those capillaries, the capillaries will lead to the lung, where the blood can now pick up the oxygen from the lungs and then deliver it back to the heart, which will then pump out the blood to the rest of the body so that the other organs in our body can get oxygen to survive and function. So as oxygenated blood is being transported, it deposits carbon dioxide waste, which is in essence what we breathe out before breathing it again. So lungs lie inside our chest. So if you look at this model over here, this is where our lung resides. This is the heart, which is like in the center, and then these are our two lungs over here. So lungs lie inside our chest, which is known as the thorax. And one interesting thing to note is that our left lung is smaller than the right one, which I'm holding in my camera through this model, because it shares space with your heart. So the heart is not like dead set in the center, it's more towards the left side of your body. So that's why your left lung tends to be smaller than your right lung. And then The walls of the thorax or the chest are formed by our rib cage. So in essence, the rib cage just helps protect any delicate organs within inside our body. So this is just an example of what a rib cage looks like through my camera. So yeah. Then the next slide, oops. So lungs are designed to bring air into contact with our bloodstream. So air travels down a large tube called the trachea, if you can see through the diagram on the right, which branches out into many smaller tubes called bronchi. So if you look at the bronchi, they're just branching out like trees, you can think of it, into the lungs. So the larynx is just located at the head of the trachea. Ultimately, these small tubes form a tree-like network of fine bronchioles. So bronchioles end in tiny air sacs, like we mentioned earlier, called alveoli, where gases pass between the air and blood. So lungs, I'm going to talk about their relationship with breathing, because as we know, we need lungs in order to breathe. So breathing is controlled by muscles. One interesting thing to note down is that a type of large-shaped muscle called the diaphragm lies under the rib cage. When it contracts, it flattens and pulls down, and thus that allows us to expand our chest and draw air into the lungs. So let's just say you take a deep breath, like, so in essence, we are expanding our chest because of that diaphragm. So that muscle is kind of responsible for expanding the chest. Meanwhile, the intercostal or rib muscles also contract while we breathe, but they lift the rib cage upward and outward to expand the chest still further. So these muscles are more involved with the rib cage itself. So I just want to share a really cool, interesting fact that the number of times that we breathe in a lifetime is about 500,000, which is really interesting. So the next important organ that we will be talking about is the stomach. So the stomach, which, oops, one second, I think I dropped it over here. So this is what a stomach would look like. If you look at the diagram here, and then if you look at the camera, I'm holding kind of like this miniature organ. This is the stomach. So the stomach is kind of located towards this person's like left side of the body, and it's one of the primary organs of the digestive system. So it's located in the middle abdominal cavity. Abdominal cavity is just a place where your abs are located. Like think of where your abs are, and then your stomach will be kind of located towards one's left side of the ab, and extends from the lower end of the esophagus, like we mentioned earlier, to the small intestines, particularly the duodenum, which is just the first part of the small intestines. These are the intestines, like I'm holding up. So a small mass of food called the bolus, waste, travels down your esophagus to your stomach, where through mechanical motions called peristaltic waves, where muscles in the stomach start to contract and they turn up the food, kind of like digesting the food once you eat it. So in essence, peristaltic waves are waves of muscle contraction behind the food, which squeeze the food along, which help it travel, you could say, once we eat it, down to our stomach. So our stomach lining secretes powerful gastric juices like hydrochloric acid, as well as enzymes like pepsin, renin, and lipase. And enzymes basically help digest proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, which are all macromolecules present when we eat food. So once we eat food, we can't just excrete it out. We have to digest it and make it smaller. So that's why the stomach secretes hydrochloric acid and enzymes, which break down this food. So the stomach is lined with a durable lining, which protects it from the gastric juices that it kind of produces itself, so that the stomach itself is not digested. That's how strong the acid and enzymes are within the stomach. And after about 3 hours, a muscle called the pyloric sphincter opens up to release digested food mixture into the intestines, particularly through the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine. So we will go and talk about the intestine. So this is the intestines you see over here. So the beginning part is the small intestine. If you look through my camera, I'm kind of holding the model. So the intestine would go on the model right over here. So this is the stomach towards the left side of this guy's body, if I can fit it right a little bit. So do you see this is the stomach? If everyone can look through the camera that I'm holding a model, the stomach over here, and right below that is the intestines. So the small intestine, which is one part of the general intestines itself is about 20 feet or 6 meters long and is made up of 3 parts. The first one being the duodenum, as we discussed, which in essence is right below the stomach, the jejunum, and the ileum. We won't go too much into these different parts. But in essence, the small intestine is very important for completing digestion or breaking down food into smaller particles or nutrients, right? Because we need to extract these nutrients from this food. So in order to do that, we need to first break down the food that we eat. So these particles and nutrients are absorbed by millions of tiny projections called villi that line the intestine. The nutrients are then absorbed into your blood, or a type of system called the lymphatic system, and passed into your blood to be carried out throughout the body. Because keep in mind, a lot of the organs in your body need nutrients in order to survive. So the nutrients that they rely on depend on the food that you eat. So that's why the intestines help kind of complete this digestion of breaking down the food and extracting those nutrients, and then later delivering those nutrients into like your blood system, which will then transport the nutrients within your blood to different parts of the organs in your body. So the small intestine extends from the duodenum, where it accepts any pre-digested food called chyme, to a type of space called the ileocecal orifice, where it passes the semi-fluid byproducts into now the large intestine, which we'll get into. So the large intestine is smaller than the small intestine. It's 5 feet instead of 20 feet, but it's much wider than the small intestine. If everyone can see the model I'm holding up right now through the camera, this is the small intestine towards the top. The large intestine can be noticed towards the outline, like this gray area, and the bottom. So it's very bigger in terms of the small intestine. So the main part of the large intestine is something called the colon. So the large intestine accepts the byproducts of digestion from the smaller intestine. So basically in the large intestine, glands secrete mucus and absorb water from any undigested food waste. So in essence, basically, you know how I mentioned earlier, once we digest this food, it becomes very liquidy. It's like semi-fluid. However, in order to, like, if you notice when you use the restroom and you excrete a lot of the food out, it doesn't look liquidy, like it's very hard. Well, that's where the large intestine comes into play. Basically, it helps absorb water and any mucus or any liquid aspect of the food that you eat, making it to a very solid-like substance, which in essence become your feces, or if you want to say just in a non-professional way, poop, that are eventually passed out through your body, like when you use the restroom. So the stomach, as I mentioned earlier, the small intestines, and now in this case, the large intestines, all 3 of these organs form the digestive system. As you guys realize that it helps break down the food and extract the nutrients after breaking down the food. So the next organ we'll be talking about is the liver, which is very important. So if everyone can see the camera, my face in the camera, I'm holding this model, this like brown substance, that is the liver. So the stomach is over here. So the liver will be kind of right next to it on this side. This model is not the best for fitting in objects. So the stomach is here. So this is the model. This is the intestines. The liver is going to be above the intestines over here. Or I dropped that now, so there's that. Maybe, let's see. Okay, 1 second. So in essence, the liver is right above the large intestines that we see over here, or the intestines we see here. So it's right over here, and the stomach is right next to the liver on this side. So it's kind of difficult for me to like fit this in, but in essence, this is the general idea. So do you guys see the model that I'm holding right now? If everyone can see the camera of this, can everyone see it? Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, we can see it.
Sorry, okay, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see the chat. So this, I don't want to like push it too much because all the organs will fall out, but this is what the general anatomy looks like. These are your lungs here, this brown part liver. This is the stomach, like I mentioned earlier, and then finally the intestines on the bottom. So I'm going to be talking about the liver. Why is it so important? It's the largest of the body's glands, which is responsible for secreting like hormones to help our body function, but it weighs about 3 pounds. If you guys noticed, when I held it, it was very like brown looking, right? The reason why it's so brown is because it contains a lot of veins. So keep in mind that veins, which I mentioned earlier, lead back into the heart. They're very deoxygenated. So they're very like bluish in color. Well, they're portrayed to be very dark, a very dark red, like brown color. So that's why your liver looks very brown, like the model I'm holding right now. But the liver can perform over 500 vital tasks. However, one thing to remember is that it's not directly related to the digestive system. As we mentioned earlier, the digestive system only includes the stomach and the intestines, but not the liver. But it does help aid in the digestion of fats by secreting a type of green liquid called bile into the small intestines, or the duodenum. So the bile liquid that it produces helps, in essence, break down the food, which the small intestines will use. So the key role, though, of the liver is processing the nutrients. Before going to the rest of the body, the blood from the small intestine carries nutrients to the liver. The liver breaks some of these down and builds more useful chemicals that it stores for future use. So finally, the liver is also responsible for cleaning your blood, like there's going to be a lot of waste in your blood, and removing toxins that could harm your body. So it does that by destroying any unwanted red blood cells. And then it basically forms a type of compound called urea. And if you guys may have heard, like what it's basically the compound that you use that is present when you pee or in your urine, which helps excrete any unwanted or harmful wastes. And it helps, in essence, the liver form a type of protein that's helpful, like let's just say when you have a wound and you need to, in essence, form a blood clot, it forms a protein called fibrinogen, which helps with blood coagulation, or like kind of allowing blood to clump together. And it stores energy in a form of compound called glycogen, which helps us kind of carry out our everyday functions. The liver is also helpful with storage of vitamins, metabolism, meaning how we eat, and produces protective and antitoxic substances, which could help protect us from like any either wastes or toxins out there in our body. So I will now go on to a specific type of food processor in the liver called a lobule. So lobules in the liver act like miniature factories. They're like these food processors, and each lobule is formed by billions of cube-shaped cells called hepatocytes. One key thing to remember is that whenever you hear the prefix hepa or hepatocytes, think of like your liver or hip in a way. So one of their main jobs, these lobules or food processors, is to modify the chemicals in food into forms that are more useful to your body, which can be stored. So it helps kind of in a way store this energy. And this dark circle or the center of the circle that you see in the diagram on the left of the liver lobule is a vein. And in essence, this vein carries processed blood from the liver back to the heart. Like we discussed earlier, all veins lead from different organs of the body back into the heart. So the next organ I'll be talking about is the gallbladder. So unlike the liver, the gallbladder doesn't have that many functions. In fact, the gallbladder is very small. It's tucked away behind the liver. And it concentrates and stores bile, which is what the liver produces. And remember, bile is important for digesting food. And in essence, one thing about the gallbladder is that it just concentrates this bile. So the bile is produced, again, like I mentioned earlier, by the liver, but in a very dilute or very low concentrated form. So the gallbladder just, in essence, makes it more like potent, makes it more powerful and concentrated. So this bile is used during digestion to break down fats and food. And when it is needed, the bile flows along a type of pathway called the bile duct into the duodenum, which is the small intestines, where it is, in essence, where it's able to be secreted through a type of passage called the cystic duct. So think of it like your liver over here, or sorry, your gallbladder. The gallbladder is behind the liver, and then it's able to go through the intestines through the cystic duct. The bile, in essence, is able to travel from the gallbladder to the intestines. So the gallbladder is like bluish green in color. Like you can look on the diagram, they portray it in a very like green color type of way. But one interesting fact to note is that the gallbladder is not actually critical for survival. And it can be removed without significant effects. Like I could just remove my gallbladder and I would still be able to function. But one health problem that's very common is that crystallization of the bile, like salts. So you know how I mentioned bile is important for digestion of food. One problem is that at times, this liquid can be formed into these type of solid salts through a process known as crystallization, which in essence, these salts give rise to gallstones, which often require surgical removal because it can be very painful when you have these gallstones blocking up like your different pathways. Because in essence, certain blood or certain nutrients won't be able to travel through if you have stones blocking like your gallbladder. So that's why a lot of people remove it. Ari, do you have a question? Ari? Sorry.
Yeah, so you know how you said the prefix HEPA is like related to the liver? Are hepatologists like liver people?
Yes. Yes. Think of it like, liver people, like hip. It actually means hip. So think of like any organs within the hip area of your region. So liver. There's a type of cancer known as hepatocarcinoma. So it's a cancer found often in the liver, or in essence, the hip. It's like a cancer located near the hip. So yes, a lot of I can't pronounce it probably, hepatologists deal with like the liver or organs near the hip. So
Okay.
yeah. So basically, so this slide is just about the gallbladder, and I was just kind of showing you guys that the gallbladder is very different from the liver, and the fact that it's not as important in our body. Like I mentioned earlier, the liver performs over 500 like functions, and then meanwhile the gallbladder, like you could just remove it from your body and you could still live perfectly fine. So I just thought that was an interesting thing to note. And then finally, we will be talking about our kidneys. So do you see this model I have over here? I just removed the intestines, the liver, and the stomach, so you can look on the inside. And if you are able to see through my camera, you can look at these kidneys, and they look like these beans in a way. Like that's why when you go to the store, you see beans called kidney beans, because they look like your kidneys. So they're like these dark things over here, one on the left and one on the right. So these kidneys are responsible for filtering toxins, wastes, ingested salts, so you don't have buildup, right? And then minerals and salts out of the bloodstream. In fact, a lot of the time, you can get a lot of like, remember how I mentioned you can get a lot of like stones earlier as a health problem in the previous slide when I mentioned the gallbladder, like crystallization of bile salts? That occurs a lot of times if your kidneys themselves are not working properly, because the kidneys need to remove a lot of these salts so that it doesn't build up into these stones, which will block your organs or block pathways in your organs, preventing like blood or any nutrients from traveling to the rest of your body. So your kidneys are very important. Kidneys are also responsible for regulating the acidity, which is low pH of the blood. So if you guys are unfamiliar with the pH scale, it's a scale that ranges from 0 to 12, with 0 to 6 being acidic, and then 8 to 12 being basic. So the neutral pH occurs at a pH of 7. So a neutral pH, think of like distilled water or the water you drink, that's around the pH of 7. In fact, the pH in our bloodstream is towards 7. It's around 6.8, but it tends to be very neutral. So the thing is, you don't want to have too much acidity buildup within you could say your intestines or like the lower half of your body. So kidneys themselves are the organs responsible for regulating that acidity, which is the low pH of the blood, by excreting these additional salts, which are basic. So if you read about salts, they tend to be on the higher end of the pH scale, which is ranging from 8 to 12. So let's just say you have blood, but it's very, very acidic, right? You need to balance out that acidity towards like a pH of 7, which is neutral. So the kidneys will secrete these alkaline or basic salts to counteract the acidity of that low pH of the blood, kind of resulting in a more neutral-like pH, like per se towards a pH of 7. So one thing I would like to mention is that the top of the kidney each top of the kidney has a type of thing called an adrenal gland. So I just want to mention that adrenal glands are very important because they secrete these molecules called hormones, which help the body reduce stress. So yes, and then finally, function of the kidney is that it produces urine. So basically, whenever you go to like use the restroom or pee, in essence, you ultimately have that urine produced because of your kidneys, which we see on the left here. So I think that is the last slide in the presentation, kind of just talking about like the different organs in our body. That kind of took a little long, but I'm glad you guys were able to learn about the circulatory system, the heart, the lungs, as well as the digestive system. So as you saw, I was able to show you with the model what it looks like. And I don't think we have too much time now, but in essence, I'll kind of just show you with my tweezers with the second model, if everyone can see through the skeleton I'm holding, of what we kind of reviewed today. So this is your—
Teresa, it might be a good idea to stop sharing your screen so we could see it a little bit better.
Oh, yeah, because, yeah. Okay, can everyone see me like full function? Okay, perfect, sorry about that. So this is a second model that I'm holding right now. So kind of what we discussed about today, I'll just do a quick wrap up. So we have ribs, right? And the ribs help protect the internal organs in our body, like the lungs and the heart. So when I remove the ribs out from the skeleton, right, we have over here towards the left side, the heart. So the heart is important for pumping blood to the rest of our body, right? So it helps pump like oxygenated blood to the rest of our body through a system known as the circulatory system, which carries this oxygen-rich blood to organs like the liver or the intestines and delivers that oxygen to these organs. As a result, once the oxygen has been delivered to like the other organs within our body, it returns back to the heart, but obviously now it's low on oxygen since it already gave that oxygen away to the other organs in our body. So then the heart, it needs to gain, or you could say collect this oxygen in order to repeat the cycle and give more of the oxygenated blood back to the rest of the organs by going to the lungs. So once we look at this, this is basically what your lungs look like. So your lungs are basically they encapsulate your heart. So they're very close to the heart because they provide oxygen to the heart so that the heart can pump out this rich oxygen blood to the rest of the body. So these are the lungs, and then this is the heart right here, which we see. And then after that, this is the liver. We kind of went over what the liver does, and the liver has over 500 vital functions, and particularly it helps process nutrients. Just a key thing to remember though is that the liver in itself, it just helps aid with digestion as it produces a fluid, as you mentioned earlier, called bile, which breaks down fats within our foods so that it can be easier to extract the nutrients once we've broken down those foods into fats. So that's the liver, but it's not involved in the digestive system. If you guys can remember, the digestive system only includes the stomach, which I have over here, and which is right on top of the intestines. So this beige thing you see over here is the stomach, and the bottom part you see are the intestines. So the small intestines are important for extracting nutrients. Meanwhile, the large intestines we mentioned are important for getting rid of these wastes, like through the form of feces, you could say when you use the restroom. So it removes water from the food that you eat, kind of making it very hard. So that's in essence kind of a very brief but general overview as to what the human body like looks like and how the different organs work together in order to help us survive. So I kind of wanted to show you the different models in itself so that you could see kind of what it looks like. And then I know we have about 12 minutes, or sorry, we have a few minutes left. So I prepared a very brief game of Kahoot because I know everyone loves Kahoot in a way, kind of reviewing what we've done so far. So I will share my Kahoot thing with you. 1 second. So if you guys want to log into Kahoot, I will be doing it as a classic mode. And code to join, I'll put it in the chat, is 734-5197. If everyone was to go join Kahoot, I'll just put it in here. 7345197.
Teresa, how many questions do you have for us today?
I have about I think 18 questions, and I can end earlier too as well, if time need be. If
Someone
that's
just
okay.
asked how long till we are done, so maybe like it won't take very long, so maybe 10 minutes.
No, it won't take very long because Kahoot tends to be like also quicker than like Jeopardy and stuff like that. So yes.
Definitely.
So I entered in the. Can everyone still hear me? Okay. I entered in the code in the chat. So if everyone wants to log onto Kahoot, just use the code I've put in the chat, 7345197. We have one player registered, Avi, and then if anyone else wants to register, Gurjap's there. Savia's there. We have 3 people. And
How do you enter in?
okay, so that's fine. So in order to join a Kahoot, you have to go at this link called www.kahoot.it. So I put the link in the description. So basically just use that link, copy and paste it, and then it'll ask you for a code. And the code is what I put right above the link, which is 7345197. I see that multiple people were able to, Rox for H, Henrika for H. Okay, Savia, Avi, Gorjap. How many people do we have? Just raise, okay, yes?
So my code isn't working for some reason. I put in the exact code, but it's not able to register it. It's saying code is invalid.
Okay. Here, why don't you try?
Just go straight to, try typing in the www.kahoot.it.
Okay.
Then try the code again, because I went to my Kahoot app and put the code in and it didn't work. So just try to go from www.kahoot.it.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yes?
I don't know how to see the Zoom screen and the Kahoot at the same time.
So yeah, that might be a problem. I think you'll just have to alternate back and forth, but just with Kahoot.
You
We'll
do
be
not
able
have
to-
to see the Zoom screen in order to do the Kahoot.
Okay, you have to see the Zoom screen.
You don't. You don't have to see the screen.
You don't have to see this. Yeah, you don't have to see the Zoom screen in order to complete. Carter is right. So it's okay if you're not able to see the Zoom screen, because once you're in Kahoot, you'll just be answering questions, and then you'll kind of hear my audio kind of discussing as to like the answers that are right or wrong. So we
You
have
able to get in?
I still wasn't able to get in.
okay. 73. Okay, but let's see. 7345197.
Right, it finally worked.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's okay. Someone is able to get in. Ari, okay. Good job. Okay, and then
If you give me a minute or two, we can get in. It's just my Clever is loading.
Yeah,
of course we'll wait. Like,
I figured out how to make it both screens out at once.
okay, perfect. So that you can see both screens. Great.
Yeah, because my dad, he's an engineer, a computer engineer, so he teach me a lot of stuff. So I finally figured it out. I had to go
Awesome.
tell him how to do it.
Awesome.
So, oh, sorry. So is everyone registered in the Kahoot game?
Yeah.
Except I think one person.
Not me. Give me a couple seconds.
1 second,
course,
I need
of
one
course.
more second.
Okay.
What is the meeting ID?
The meeting ID is 7345197. It's also in the group chat, or in the Zoom chat below. 7345197.
Okay.
I apologize. Could you say the meeting ID one more time?
Of course. 7345197.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, good job. You got kicked out.
Hey, what about me?
I just put your name. Oh,
Is
I just
everyone
got kicked out of the game. No, but
okay? Good job. Are you able to log back in?
okay.
Sorry. Okay. It was the first time I'm doing Kahoot with Zoom.
You can share your screen and then we can see what you're seeing.
Okay, yeah, perfect. I think that's a good idea. So I'll just share my Kahoot screen right now. Yeah, honestly, I should have. So these are all the people who are in. I think, good job. Are you in? Because you got kicked out,
Yes,
you
I'm in.
mentioned.
I'm in.
Sorry, this sound is like. I'm just gonna mute the sound. I'm sorry. It might be a little distracting or okay. So is everyone in?
I'm in.
You're in? Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna go forward, I think, or there's something in the chat. I just remembered someone said that they were kicked out, so I didn't want to like go. Okay, Sabia's in. Okay. Okay, I'll start in like a few seconds now, okay? I think because a lot of people are in, and okay, I'm gonna start right now. Okay, so can everyone see the Kahoot starting?
Yeah.
The group of organs that transform basically what we eat into energy that our bodies can use. Think about which system is very important for processing food, right? Getting the nutrients out of the food. Good job. You guys all got that right. You're correct. It is the digestive system. That is important for kind of breaking down food and obtaining the nutrients from the food so that it can be kind of sent throughout the rest of the body. So everyone, Ari and then rocks for H. Good job. Everyone got that right. So that's really good. So where is the gallbladder located? I think I kind of showed this with respect to the liver. I think I mentioned this very
Mine's
briefly.
loading.
Oh no. It might. Okay, so that is a tricky question. So the gallbladder is located at the bottom of the liver. Kind of remember the liver produces that bile fluid. Remember that bile like liquid, which is important for digesting food. Right after the liver is done producing it, it needs to go to the gallbladder. So the gallbladder tends to be located towards the bottom side of the liver. Like through my organ over here, with the liver being present, you could say around this area, the gallbladder is right over here. So if everyone could see that, it's like right below the liver. But yeah, that was a tricky question. Whoever got that right, that was good. Yes. So question 3, what do you call the chemicals that break down food in the intestine?
Mine was loading and I didn't hear you because it was frozen.
Okay. What do you call chemicals? Okay, so are you able to access the screen, Prisha, or? Okay. So I think for some people that it's loading with, maybe you can try exiting and joining again with the game in the Zoom chat. That tends to happen sometimes. Sorry about that. But with respect to the question, a lot of you guys got that right, which is good. Enzymes are the chemicals that break down food in the intestines. Nucleic acids, a few of you guys chose nucleic acids. The nucleic acids are not the same as like hydrochloric acid, as I mentioned. Nucleic acids are like DNA, which stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. That's not an acid really. It's just more involved with the genetic information like DNA. I just kind of put that in there as a trick question because acids. I know some people would choose acids, but it's enzymes in this case. Enzymes break down food in the intestines. So that was a tricky question. So good job, guys. Which organ is higher up in the body, the liver or the stomach? Kind of keep in mind when I held both of them in both the two models I had. This is a tricky question because they were like right next to each other in a way. Yes, so this was very tricky, but the liver is higher up in your body. If you guys remember the organ thing that I kind of showed you, I'm kind of mixing the two organs together. The liver is like bigger than the stomach and it's located around here. And the stomach is right below on this side of the liver. So I don't know if you can guys kind of see through my camera, maybe or not through the Zoom thing, but the liver is right on top of the stomach. So that was a tricky question, but a lot of you guys got that right, which is good. So good job, everyone. I don't know who's which, like Henrico and Rox 4H. So, but what is the name of the science dedicated to studying the human body and how it works? It was towards the beginning of the PowerPoint. Okay, so I can see you guys got that right. Physiology is tricky. Physiology is basically how the organ systems work like in a cohesive manner with each other in order to help our body function. But just studying the human body on its own is anatomy. I said that like at the very beginning, anatomy, science dedicated to studying the body and how it works. Physiology has to do more with the organ internal structure, which is also what we covered. But for this question, anatomy is the name of science dedicating to study the body itself and how it works. But that was a tricky question. So yeah, I can see why people, but oh, good job, Avi, you're in first place. This is a pretty tough quiz, so that's good. How many layers does your eye have? It was in the PowerPoint. Good job, everyone. Your eye has 3 layers, an outer layer, a middle layer, and an inner layer. So I'm glad a lot of you guys got that correct. Yeah, so that was kind of an easy one. Good job, Avi. You're on fire. And then Ari's good, Gori, Tai. But yes.
I can't even see which question is which.
Are you able to see the question right now?
It just like says like diamond, square, and circle and triangle, but I don't know which one's which.
I think you have to look at the Zoom screen because I have the question available through there. Look through the Zoom session. I shared my screen, and then you'll see the questions, if that makes sense. Sorry about that. Kahoot is tricky with the Zoom thing, but
Just
yeah.
do your best.
Yes. So the iris is the color part of the eye, and it controls the amount of light entering the eye. The transparent disc that focuses light on the retina is the lens, and the transparent dome that bends the incoming light is the cornea. That was a tricky question. So yeah, good job for whoever got that. And Avi is doing well. Everyone's doing really well here, so that's good. Is it possible for a person to live without a gallbladder? I think yes.
Can you give me time? I need time.
Of course.
Because I can't see.
Is it possible for
The
a
game
person
is
to
already
live?
set up with a time, so unfortunately I don't think Parisa can do it so much because she already has the time set that you're allowed to answer the
Oh,
question.
I got it correct.
Oh, good job. Okay. Yeah, I will
Great.
repeat the question too. I realized when I will go on. Sorry about that. I'll repeat it faster. But good job, everyone. Yes, it's possible for you to live without a gallbladder. I mean, you will survive. So yeah. So what is another name for the large intestine? I mentioned this in the PowerPoint.
Oh no. Okay, got it.
What is another name for the large intestine? Big intestine, triangle, colon, diamond, or lobule? Okay, sorry, I forgot to repeat the options for, I think, see the question. So a lot of you guys got this correct. Yes, colon is another name for the large intestine. The lobule is not in the large intestine. It's in fact part of the liver, right? It's the food processor in the liver, which in essence helps break down food. So colon is for large intestine. So good job, everyone. You are doing really well. And then, oh, the word gastric refers to which part of the body? I didn't explicitly say this in the PowerPoint, but it referred to this organ producing a lot of acid, and it's hence known as gastric acid. So that should give a huge clue, I feel like. Liver, triangle, large intestine, diamond, stomach, circle, or gallbladder. Okay, a lot of you guys got this correct, which is good. Yes, gastric refers to the stomach. That's why when I mentioned gastric acid, stomach produce a lot of gastric acid. So yes, that was a good question. That was a little hard though. Oh, what is chyme? PowerPoint. It was stated a little bit in the PowerPoint. Mixture of food and gastric juices in the stomach, triangle, diamond, food waste, circle, mucus, or square, saliva. Yeah, okay. So chyme is the mixture of food and gastric juices in the stomach. I can see why some of you guys chose saliva, but the more proper term was the triangle, mixture of food and gastric juices within the stomach in itself, when it's already been. So good job though for everyone who got that correct. That was a little tricky. How many chambers does the heart have? I went over like the different chambers, kind of, and the valves, and like which kind of connect to each chamber. There are two of these subparts of the chamber. So triangle 2, diamond 5, yellow circle 3, or green square 4. You can choose for people who can't see the question. Yes, good job. A lot of you guys got this correct. Yes, you have 4 chambers in your heart. Not 3. The 4 chambers are the left atrium, left ventricle, and then the right atrium, and then the right ventricle. So those are the 4 chambers in your heart. So yes, good job. So what encompasses the outer layer of the eye? When I mentioned the different parts of the eye, red triangle, iris, diamond, retina, or circle, sclera. For people who can't see the options. So red triangle is iris, blue diamond is retina, or yellow circle, sclera. Yes, the outer layer of the eye is the sclera. Iris is not really designated to the layer, you could say. I'm just saying like what would make up the layer, so it's sclera. Retina is the inner layer of the eye, not the outer layer of the eye. So good job, everyone. A lot of you guys are getting, majority of you guys are getting these questions correct, which is very hard for grade level you guys are in. So that's very. So what valve is located between the right atrium and the right ventricle? I mentioned this a little earlier with the PowerPoint. Pulmonary valve, red triangle, diamond, aortic valve, circle, mitral valve, or square, tricuspid valve. Triangle, pulmonary valve, diamond, aortic valve, circle, Okay, even the majority of you guys got this right. Yes, it was tricuspid valve. I kind of tried to show it in the model, and then I also stated it in the PowerPoint. Between your right atrium and your right ventricle, there's a tricuspid valve. Hence, tricuspid because it has 3 cusps. I don't know if you can see through my camera, but 1, 2, 3. So yes, the tricuspid valve is between the right atrium and the right ventricle. That was a Oh, Avi, you got that correct. So yeah, good job. That was really tricky. And whoever got that correct, that's really good. Which lung is larger? This triangle, right lung, diamond, left lung, or circle, both lungs are the same size. Question, which lung is larger? Triangle right lung, diamond left lung, or circle both lungs are the same size? Yes, it is the right lung. This was a tricky question because if you guys remember, especially towards the end when I was showing you, the heart is located on the left side more of the chest. It's not located in the dead center. As a result, the left lung is smaller than the right lung. So the right lung is larger. So good job, whoever got it right. Oh, this is a multi-select. Select all the organs that form the digestive system. Triangle, stomach, diamond, liver, circle, large intestines, and square, small intestines. This is a multi-answer question. So select all the organs that form the digestive system, triangle, stomach, diamond, liver, circle, large intestines, and square, small intestines. Yes, a lot of you guys are correct. Stomach, large intestines, and small intestines all form the digestive system. I mentioned it earlier in the PowerPoint. The liver only aids in digestion, but it's not part of the digestive system tract. It just produces bile acid, which in itself digests the food, but it's not responsible for like mechanically digesting the food, unlike the other three organs. So that was a bit of a tricky question. So good job, Ari. That's really good. Few more questions left. What makes up the middle layer of the eye? Triangle sclera, diamond retina, circle iris, or square choroid? What makes up the middle layer of the eye? Triangle sclera, diamond retina, circle iris, or square choroid?
What's wrong?
This is a tricky one. So the middle layer of the eye is the choroid. In the PowerPoint, it's the substance that forms the majority of like the middle layer. Has a lot of blood vessels, remember? The retina is the inner layer of the eye. Remember that retina is the inside layer of the eye. The sclera, I'm glad no one chose that because that's the outer layer of the eye. But the choroid is the middle layer of the eye. So that was a bit tricky. So yeah. So a few more questions left. How many breaths do we take in a lifetime? I kind of mentioned this in the PowerPoint, I think with an extra 0, but I said it correctly. Triangle 400,000, diamond 4 million, circle 500,000, or square 5 million. How many breaths do we take in a lifetime? 500,000. Yeah, we take 500,000 breaths in our lifetime. I mentioned that in the PowerPoint, but yes, I put 5 million as like a trick question in there, but we only take 500,000 breaths in our, which is still a lot if you think about it, but yes. So good job, Ari. That was, you're on a roll, I see. So which muscles are responsible for primarily lifting the rib cage upwards and outwards? Read this question carefully. Triangle diaphragm, diamond heart, circle intercostal muscles, or square sphincter. Which muscles are responsible for primarily lifting the, oh God, I can't read the question. So whoever, this is a very tricky question. That's why I said read the question a bit carefully. So the muscles for lifting the lung upwards and outwards are the intercostal. If you remember from the PowerPoint, another name for the intercostal muscles are also known as the diaphragm is it's just being stretched out, but for primarily lifting the ribs outwards are the intercostal muscles. So tricky question. Yeah, that was a tricky question, right? So good job, Ari. I think you got that right. That was, yeah, good job. That was very tricky. So yes. What valve is located between the left atrium and, keep in mind, we already said that the tricuspid valve was for right atrium and right ventricle, so that's a cue that the circle isn't the answer. So triangle mitral valve, diamond aortic valve, or square pulmonary valve? So it's the mitral valve. One, you could also use kind of reasoning to eliminate the other choices because you know aorta exists. So the aortic valve exists between the aorta and another chamber, which is from the left ventricle and the aorta. So that's why the aortic valve is not the answer. Meanwhile, the pulmonary valve, you could use the same reasoning saying that if it's pulmonary valve, then it has to be between the pulmonary, vein and in essence the right ventricle. So you can kind of know and eliminate aortic and pulmonary because in the question just says left atrium and left ventricle. It doesn't indicate anything about the aorta or pulmonary. So you automatically know aortic and pulmonary valves are not eligible to be the answers. So mitral valve, that was really good. And we'll see who the winner's out. Rox4H, I don't know who's the username for that. Henrico, and then Ari, I think. Good job, Ari. You got okay. This is a really
Awesome
question. Tricky, I would say Kahoot. And Avi and Gori, good job for being runner-ups. This was a bit tricky. I put in a few tricky ones in there, but I'm glad you all kind of were able to participate in this session. I'm really passionate about the human body, so I try to incorporate a few the circulatory system that you guys all saw earlier. And keep in mind, you guys are in elementary and middle school, so the fact that you were able to answer a lot of these questions right is still really good because these concepts are you'll kind of experience in high school, especially if you're taking anatomy. And this is just a bit of a head start into what different functions the organ has. So I'm glad you guys were all able to learn something from the PowerPoint session, if that helps. I know it was a bit hard, the Kahoot, but you guys were all able to get the beginning questions right, so that was really good. Prisha, is everything okay? You said no. Oh, okay. Prisha? Okay, I guess.
Yeah.
You've mentioned something in the comment section. No. Is everything all right?
I lost.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, I thought there was something wrong with the Zoom session. And I know some people are saying send the PowerPoint. Can I attach the file here? Let me see if I can attach the file right here from. If I can send it in the Zoom chat because a lot of you are requesting the.
Maybe we can make it.